So we've sort of been having a few of the conversations, we've been talking a lot about multi-platform and cross-platform and things like that. And you guys are doing a lot in this space. You're also introducing a lot of new sort of language and words and things like that. So I would love sort of for you to give us a take on the optics of Nielsen right now at a cross-platform and some of the new measurement tactics and things that you're looking at.
Sure. I think that, and it's been a theme throughout the conversations, we really are at a crossroads right now for the media industry. I think you've got this dramatic innovation across technology and devices, consumers who have an appetite to consume media when they want, where they want, on the device they want, and media publishers who are distributing their content across multiple platforms. So I think that what people are asking for, what the advertisers as well as agencies are looking to be able to do, is provide integrated multi-screen campaigns. John just said that the results, or what we've seen, is that they tend to be much more impactful from an ROI standpoint than just monomedia kind of planning, and we've seen the same thing. But cross-platform is something that Nielsen sees as probably a little more complex than what most people are describing. By that, and I think it's important, because by that what I mean is that there are multiple layers, and then there are specific components within each of the layer, and you have to have consistent and comparable measures both between the components and across the layers. So what I mean by that, for example, usage. When someone is watching, are they watching live or is it time shifted? When you're talking about content, is it video? Is it audio? Is it text? All of those are part of an integrated campaign across multiple devices. What device is it? Is it on television? Is it radio? Is it a tablet or a laptop or a smartphone? Then you've got within that the delivery. So is someone going on and turning on a TV set or a radio, or are they viewing content through a web browser or through an app on a mobile device? And finally, the ad model. Is it a linear model or is it a dynamic digital model? And all of that makes up cross-platform. So the consistent measure across all of those layers and all of those components, I think, is what's critically important in making planners and buyers more able to deliver effective results for their advertiser clients.
So I live in a kind of a convergence world, like that's what I do on a daily basis, right? But if I still start to think through the Herculean task of normalizing for all of those, those variables and sort of that data set of different channels, mediums, formats, et cetera, to try and come up with an apples to apples sort of comparative, there's a little bit of magic and a little bit of science there, right? So what's the point of origin? Like, where do you start to tackle this problem?
I think we started with the content. There's two forms. If you're talking about video specifically, it's either television generated or native digital video content. And the first thing you have to be able to do is to tag it so that you can view it, you can measure it. TV content has been tagged with Nielsen watermarks for a long time. The information that's in the OCR tag is also now available for digital content that's been created. So what winds up happening is we've developed a single implementation capability for the content creators or the publishers in order to be able to tag the content appropriately. What happens then is when that video is viewed, whether it's on a television set or a mobile device or through a browser on a laptop, that video is being played and that content or that tag is being identified. So either it's the watermark that's being identified or it's the metadata in the tag that's being evaluated. So we know what the content is, when it was viewed, all of those sorts of things. The second piece then is what happens with the ad. Is it the ad load from the original linear model, or is it dynamic insertion within the digital model? And the ad can also be tagged with an OCR tag. So that tag can be read by the same capability, the same metering system that we're using today. That then gets carried through, and we send off for information from the two pieces of data that we collect. There's the meta tag of the content, and then there's the ID of either the commercial or the device that's being used. And it's the ad ID, if you will, from the iPhone or from an Android phone or tablet. That information then goes to our data partners, Facebook, who's providing us with age and gender information from their 200 million plus people in the US alone. And then from Experian, who's providing us with income, education, and presence of children. That information then gets used to determine who's been watching what and when on what device. We then run that against our cross-platform homes panel to adjust for different anomalies and so forth. And then we can attribute whether or not the TV content was linear and viewed on a mobile device and attribute it to, for example, the C3 ratings, or if it's after that period of time, we can say we've got the digital program rating, which evaluates the content, and the OCR, or online campaign rating, which then gives credit to the ad unit that's been seen. So we can evaluate whether it's the linear model, the cross-platform, or specifically digital only.
If you, from your vantage point, I mean, given specifically your dominance in television of Nielsen, right? But from your vantage point now, as we're in a time of convergence and cross-platform, do you think that it is the buy side driving this more, or the sell side? Like, where is the greatest need to enable ease around the buying and planning cross-platform?
I think John was right. I think it's the buy side predominantly in planning. I think that in order to get the impact from multi-screen integrated campaigns, you have to be able to plan them that way. And having independent measures or independent silos within which to do that doesn't work. So the questions that we're getting and the requests that we're getting are tending to come from media agencies and the planners in saying, I've got to be able to plan more effectively across channels and right now even globally. So we've had conversations with a number of trading desks and large media agencies talking about using normative Nielsen data to help in planning, and that includes buyer graphics in identifying audiences for reach.
But how does that, I mean, in a real sense, in a sort of an implementation sense, how does that really manifest, right? Because still, as we've talked about, it was interesting, you know, Brent mentioned sort of the 70% upfront, 30%, you know, 40% then actually operationalized throughout the year. Television, 70% of dollars move in the upfronts, right? So if cross-platform includes television, which is A, the plurality of revenue, and B, the plurality of the plurality revenue moves in the second quarter of the year, right. I mean, how does that really change the way we do business in a real sense?
I think what's happening is that the buyers are looking at inventory that they can use most effectively for the different advertisers that they have based on what's happening at that point in time. So whether it's buying programmatic through digital or upfronts for television, it's collecting the inventory that you know is going to capture the audience profiles your advertisers are interested in, and then fulfilling them. And I think Brent, excuse me, mentioned it. It's kind of a portfolio planning. I've got lots of inventory across lots of platforms and a lot of different advertisers. What are the best combinations in order to reach their goals? And that's kind of the way the planning is being done. So while the automation of the function, I think, is improving, I think the focus has got to be more strategic. So I think you're going to see a lot fewer junior planners who are just putting spots and dots into a flow chart, and a lot more people who are looking at the impact of integrated cross-channel planning for specific audience profile types.
Does cross-channel, where does the time, where does the construct of time fit into cross-channel planning? Does cross-channel require that there's a continual, constant sort of checking and rechecking and optimization around media, or do we have enough of a sort of statistically significant data set that we can say with confidence this media mix for this category, cross-platform, et cetera, you know, around this sort of anchor TV buy will drive this ROI? Like, where are we in those two extremes?
Well, I think that certain day parts and time is important, obviously, on TV, and there are certain things that are happening at certain points in time. But I think that the combination, so it's not an either-or kind of a scenario. You can't say, I'm going to ground all of what I do around this particular time or times within a TV program. What I want to be able to do is say, what are the places that my audiences are engaging? Where are they and when? And even the same person can be in a very different state of mind depending on where they are and what time it is. If you look at somebody who's on their mobile device at Tuesday in the morning down in Wall Street, they're going to be not quite as receptive as that same guy who's sitting on his couch at home on a Sunday with the same mobile device looking at something while watching the game on TV. So you have to take time into consideration,
Yeah.
but it's more about where your audience is and what the receptivity is, I think.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm getting, perhaps I'm like getting too cerebral about this, but what a campaign flight is feels that it's much more fluid, to use our, the words of the theme thus far. Like the idea of a flight and a campaign, typically regardless, I mean, television even is the far extreme, right? But even digital in some regards is set it and forget it, right? There's a period of time that you buy, you traffic, it's, and you see what happens, and there's sort of this period of time that you give the media an opportunity to prove that it's not delivering, right? And when we talk about real-time data and information and what automation affords us, where do they meet? Like, what's the runway that you need to give a cross-platform campaign in order to be able to have confidence whether or not your media mix is delivering? Like, there feels like there's a...
I think, market mix modeling tends to be a backward-looking
and there's like a 90-day latency at minimum, right?
So, but what winds up happening is what you're talking about, I think, is the move from planning on reach to planning on impact. It's not just enough to reach my audiences. Am I breaking through with my message? So the 3R framework that we use at Nielsen is reach, resonance, and reaction. So if I'm reaching the right audience, is my message resonating? And if it's not resonating in certain channels or in certain programs or with certain content, I need to be able to get that information in real time or near real time so that I can do something about it. Then finally, what the advertisers really care about is the reaction. Are they taking some kind of action? Are they trying my product? Are they continuing to buy my product? Are the things that I think planning will move towards. It's less about reaching an audience and more about driving those behaviors that the advertisers care about.
So last question, you made a comment about, we're going to have to move from and depart from spots and dots and, reinvent into something a lot more hands-on, I guess, and involved media planning that's higher touch and higher involved, right? That being the case, how do we shepherd that? If we're on the leading edge, right, how do we shepherd that as an industry to make sure that our benches of folks that are in the agencies and media buyers actually have the skills and the understanding of the difference between reach versus impact and what that means, and how to buy in a construct other than silos? Like, how do we accelerate that change?
I think the greatest thing that could happen to the media industry, especially as it relates to agencies and their planning, and I've had this conversation with Matt Seiler and I had this conversation with Christy last night, is moving from the way that media agencies are compensated, which is often on a savings guarantee, which is forcing them to chase lower CPMs and potentially less impactful, and moving towards performance that's based on business results. Am I driving brand equity? Am I increasing the sales or market share of my advertiser? That's where the agency model needs to move. And I think the agencies that are able to do that right are the ones that are going to win, because they'll be aligned with their advertisers' business objectives and they'll share in that benefit.
Got it. Thanks, Dave.